Somewhere in the Caribbean, around 1714, a merchant sailor named William Phillips was dragged aboard a pirate sloop at gunpoint. He had not volunteered. He had not committed a crime. He had simply been on the wrong ship at the wrong time. Within 48 hours, Phillips was hauling ropes alongside men who had not bathed in months, sleeping shoulder to shoulder in a space so cramped that the person next to him could not roll over without pressing into his ribs. His drinking water had turned green. His food was crawling with insects. And the worst part? He was one of the lucky ones. Because the men who refused to join were thrown overboard. That was how careers in piracy usually began, not with a treasure map and a bottle of rum, but with a stranger holding a blade to your throat and asking if you preferred sailing or drowning. Welcome to Dead Man's Shore. I'm Jack, and today we are answering a question you have probably never seriously asked yourself. Could you survive your first week on a real pirate ship? Not the Hollywood version with the charming captain and the sunset sword fights. The real one. The one that smelled like a sewer, fed you things that would make a modern health inspector lose consciousness, and operated under a set of rules so strict that stealing from your own crew could get you abandoned on a sandbar with a loaded pistol and one bullet. Spoiler, that bullet was not for self-defense. Before we get into it, do me a favor. If you enjoy real pirate history, not the fairy tale version, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me which part of pirate life you think you could actually handle. I read every single one. Now, let's get you on board. Your first day starts the way most pirate careers started during the Golden Age, which ran roughly from 1690 to 1730. You were either pressed into service, meaning kidnapped from a captured merchant vessel, or you volunteered, which usually meant you had been starving, beaten, and underpaid on a legal ship for so long that sailing under a black flag started to sound like a promotion. And honestly, for many sailors, it was. Merchant captains in the early 1700s were notorious for cutting wages, rationing food to the point of starvation, and beating crew members for the smallest infractions. The mortality rate on merchant ships sometimes rivaled that of the slave ships they serviced. A pirate vessel, by comparison, offered better food, a democratic vote on major decisions, and a written code of conduct that every man signed before the voyage began. But do not mistake that for comfort. The moment you stepped aboard, every romantic idea you ever had about piracy died a quick and unglamorous death. The ship itself was almost certainly a sloop, the most popular vessel among pirates. These were fast, single-masted boats built for speed rather than space. Where a merchant vessel of similar size might carry 13 to 17 crew members, a pirate sloop packed in 70 or 80 men. The reason was simple. You needed enough bodies to overwhelm a target during boarding. But the cost of that tactical advantage was that you lived on top of each other in the most literal sense. Below deck, hammocks were strung so close together that the person on either side of you was close enough to breathe on your face. A standard naval hammock measured roughly 6 feet by 3 feet. That was your entire personal space. Your bedroom, your closet, your living room. If you were new, you did not get to choose where you slept. Veterans claimed the better spots. You got whatever was left, which usually meant a hammock near the bow of the ship where the rocking was worst, the smell was strongest, and the rats were boldest. Ah yes, the rats. Every wooden sailing vessel in the 18th century carried a population of rats. They lived in the walls, beneath the floorboards, and inside the storage areas where your food was kept. They chewed through ropes, contaminated water supplies, gnawed on sleeping sailors, and spread disease. Some ships carried cats specifically to control the rat population, but on a pirate vessel, The rats usually won. They bred faster than the cats could work, and in the dark, humid lower decks of a sloop packed with 80 men, they had more hiding places than anyone could ever search. Privacy did not exist. The captain was the only person with a private cabin, and even that was modest. Everyone else shared one open space. You ate there. You slept there. You relieved yourself by using a platform with a hole cut into it, mounted on the side of the deck, fully exposed to the wind, the waves, and anyone who happened to be standing nearby. There were no walls. There were no doors. Your bodily functions were community events. And the smell. Imagine 80 men who have not bathed in weeks, possibly months, crammed into a wooden box the size of a modest apartment, with no ventilation beyond whatever breeze came through the hatches. The closest thing to a shower was getting caught in a rainstorm. Some sailors washed their clothes during heavy rain. Most did not bother. The combination of sweat, bodily waste, rotting food, bilge water, and the general funk of a working ship created a stench so thick that visitors to port towns could reportedly smell a pirate vessel before they could see it. That was your first night. Welcome aboard. By day 3, you had discovered the food situation, and you were not happy about it. The primary staple of any sailor's diet, pirate or otherwise, was hardtack, also known as ship's biscuit. This was a dense cracker made from flour, water, and a pinch of salt, baked until it was hard enough to chip a tooth. The Royal Navy issued each sailor roughly 1 pound of hardtack per day. It was designed to last for years if stored properly, and that was its only virtue. Eating it fresh was like chewing a ceramic tile. Eating it after a few weeks at sea was worse, because by then, the weevils had moved in. Weevils, small grain beetles, infested hardtack almost inevitably on any voyage longer than a few weeks. Sailors would tap the biscuit against a hard surface to shake the insects loose before eating. Some ate in the dark, so they did not have to see what they were chewing. Others simply accepted the extra protein. One account from the period noted that sailors were actually suspicious of hardtack that contained no weevils at all, reasoning that if even the bugs would not eat it, the biscuit must be truly inedible. Beyond hardtack, your meals consisted of salted beef or pork, dried peas, and occasionally some form of grain. The salted meat was preserved in barrels and could last for months, but the texture and taste were closer to shoe leather than anything you would recognize as food. Sailors were known to carve dried beef into belt buckles and buttons because the material was about as flexible as wood. When fresh supplies ran out, which happened regularly, the cook prepared whatever was left, bugs and rat droppings included, because throwing food away was not an option when the nearest port might be weeks away. But the real problem was not the food, it was the water. Fresh water was stored in wooden casks, and within a few weeks at sea, it began to spoil. Algae grew inside the barrels. The water turned green, then slimy, then foul-smelling. You drank it anyway, because dehydration was worse than disgust. To make the water tolerable and to slow its decay, pirates mixed it with rum to create a drink called grog. This was not a party beverage. It was a survival strategy. Rum kept better than water. The alcohol acted as a mild disinfectant, and when mixed with lime juice, it accidentally provided a small dose of vitamin C, which was the only thing standing between you and the most feared disease on any sailing vessel: scurvy. Without vitamin C, which comes from fresh fruits and vegetables that did not last more than a week or two at sea, your body began to break down. It started with fatigue and aching joints. Then your gums swelled and started to bleed. Your teeth loosened. Old wounds that had healed months or years ago reopened as if they had never closed. Your skin bruised at the slightest touch. Your legs swelled. In advanced stages, you could not stand, could not eat, and eventually could not breathe. During the Golden Age of Piracy, scurvy is believed to have taken the lives of roughly 2 million sailors across all navies and merchant fleets. It was not a rare condition. It was an epidemic that followed every ship that stayed at sea too long. And what do you think? Did pirates really have any idea what was causing it? Write your guess in the comments. The answer might surprise you. The truth is, nobody understood scurvy until much later. A Scottish naval surgeon named James Lind conducted experiments with citrus fruits in 1747 and demonstrated that lemons and oranges could prevent and reverse the disease. But the British Admiralty ignored his findings for nearly 40 years. 40 years of sailors dying from something that could be cured with a glass of lemon juice. Pirates, who had no medical research budget, relied on whatever fresh fruit they could grab during port stops or raids. If they happened to steal a cargo of limes, they survived. If they did not, they rotted from the inside. Scurvy was not the only disease circulating below deck. Dysentery spread through contaminated food and water. Typhus traveled on the fleas carried by rats. Malaria struck crews operating in tropical waters. Gangrene took hold of any untreated wound. And the ship's surgeon, if you were fortunate enough to have one, operated with tools that doubled as carpentry equipment in a room below the waterline with no natural light and no ventilation. The sickbay smelled of infection and decay, and the treatments available ranged from ineffective to actively harmful. By day 5, if you had not already contracted something, you were in the minority, and you still had not seen a single enemy sail on the horizon. Here is the part that surprises most people. The daily reality of piracy was not combat. It was labor. Endless, repetitive, back-breaking labor. You scrubbed the deck. You repaired sails. You maintained rigging. You pumped bilge water out of the hull, a task that could take hours and had to be done constantly because every wooden ship leaked. You stood watch, scanning the horizon for hours at a time, often in brutal heat or driving rain. You loaded and unloaded cargo. You cleaned and maintained the cannons. And you did all of this on a ship that never stopped moving, on a diet that was slowly dismantling your body from the inside. A pirate sloop carried roughly 70 to 80 men specifically because the workload required it, not for fighting, for maintenance. A ship that was not maintained was a ship that sank, and the ocean did not care whether you were a pirate or an admiral. Everyone scrubbed, everyone hauled, everyone worked. But here's where pirate life took a genuinely unexpected turn. Despite the misery, disease, and manual labor, pirate ships operated under one of the most democratic systems in the Western world at that time. Every crew member signed a document called the Ship's Articles before the voyage began. These were written rules that covered everything from how loot would be divided to what happened if you broke the code. And the punishments were specific. Bartholomew Roberts, one of the most successful pirates in history, who captured over 400 vessels during his career, enforced a set of articles that included lights out by 8 in the evening, clean weapons at all times, and a ban on gambling for money. If you stole from the crew, you were marooned, dropped on a deserted island with a pistol, a small amount of water, and 1 round of ammunition. What you did with that single bullet was your business. The captain was elected by popular vote and could be removed by the same method at any time. A captain who showed cowardice or made poor decisions was replaced immediately. The quartermaster, who represented the crew's interests, held nearly as much authority as the captain outside of battle. Major decisions, whether to attack a target, where to sail next, how to spend shared resources, were put to a crew-wide vote. Every man had a say. Every man's voice counted the same. In an era when most of the Western world ran on monarchy and class hierarchy, a pirate ship was, in its strange and violent way, a functioning democracy. The articles also included something that would not become standard in most of the civilized world for another 2 centuries: disability compensation. If you lost a right arm in battle, you received 600 pieces of 8 or 6 slaves. A left arm was worth 500, a right leg, 500, a left leg, 400. Eyes and fingers had their own rates. Pirates had a workers' compensation system before most European laborers had any legal rights at all. Now, let's say you survived the food, the disease, the rats, the labor, and the smell. Let's say a sail appeared on the horizon and the captain called for an attack. This is the moment every pirate film builds toward. And it was nothing like what you have seen on screen. The approach could take hours, sometimes days. Pirates flew false flags to get close before revealing their true identity. The goal was not a fair fight. The goal was terror. When the black flag went up, it sent a clear message. Surrender now and you will be treated reasonably. If a skull and crossbones did not convince the target, some captains raised a red flag, which meant no quarter, no mercy. Everyone on board the target vessel would be dealt with harshly. Most merchant ships surrendered without a fight. They were outgunned, outmanned, and their crews had no personal stake in defending the cargo of a wealthy owner who had underpaid them for years. But when a target did fight back, the result was fast, close, and chaotic. Pirates opened fire not at the hull because they wanted the ship intact, but across the deck with cannons loaded with scrap metal, nails, and broken glass, designed to injure the crew above deck. Then came the boarding. Grappling hooks, ropes, and a rush of armed men climbing over the rails with cutlasses, pistols, and short daggers. A flintlock pistol carried 1 shot and took nearly a minute to reload, so after firing it, you used it as a club. The fighting happened on a deck that might be 15 feet wide, slick with seawater, and littered with debris. If you were wounded, even slightly, your situation became dire. Without antibiotics, any open wound was a potential death sentence. The ship's surgeon, if one existed, would clean the wound with rum, stitch it with a sail needle and thread, and hope for the best. If infection set in, and it often did, the remedy was amputation with a carpenter's saw. No anesthetic beyond a belt to bite down on, and as much rum as you could swallow before passing out. After the fight, if the target was captured, something remarkable happened. The pirate crew conducted a vote among the captured sailors, asking which officers had treated them well and which had abused them. Officers identified as cruel were punished. The rest were usually released or offered the chance to join. It was a rough form of justice, delivered by men the law considered criminals. And here is where we come back to you. Your first week. 7 days of rotten food, green water, no sleep, no privacy, no hygiene, constant labor, the threat of disease that could loosen your teeth and reopen scars, rats that bit you in the dark, hammocks so close together that you could hear every cough and groan, and the ever-present possibility that the next sail on the horizon might belong to the Royal Navy, which would hang you slowly with a short rope at Execution Dock on the Thames, while a crowd watched your legs twitch for up to 45 minutes. The average pirate career during the Golden Age lasted about 2 years. Not 2 decades, 2 years. Bartholomew Roberts, the most successful pirate of the era, was active for roughly 3 years before a Royal Navy cannonball ended his life off the coast of West Africa in 1722. Blackbeard lasted about 2 years. Calico Jack Rackham, roughly 1. Most pirates did not retire. They were captured, hanged, or died of disease long before they had a chance to spend whatever they had stolen. And what about the treasure, the fortune that every pirate film promises? The truth is, most captures brought nothing more exciting than barrels of sugar, bolts of cloth, or casks of rum. The legendary chests of gold and jewels were extraordinarily rare. When Henry Every captured the Mughal ship Ganges Sawai in 1695, the haul was worth the equivalent of over $90 million today. But Henry Every was the exception that proved the rule. He captured one enormous prize, vanished, and was never seen again. The rest of the pirate world spent years chasing that same dream and dying in the process. So could you survive your first week on a real pirate ship? Honestly, probably not. And here is the part that should sit with you. Neither could most of the men who actually tried. They signed on, or were forced on, and within months they were dead from disease, caught and executed, or simply lost at sea with no grave, no headstone, and no one left to remember their name. The pirate life was not an adventure. It was a bet. A bet that the misery of the open sea, the rotten food, the green water, the rats, the disease, and the ever-present threat of a short rope and a long drop was still somehow better than the life you were leaving behind. And for tens of thousands of desperate, underpaid, beaten-down sailors across the Caribbean and the Atlantic, it was. That tells you everything you need to know, not about pirates, but about the world that created them. If this story made you rethink anything you thought you knew about pirate life, leave a comment and tell me what surprised you the most. And if you have not subscribed yet, this is your sign. I will see you on the next voyage. Until then, stay curious and stay on dry land.